Avatar The Last Airbender is one of the most cherished cartoons ever made. It's an absolute masterpiece. And when you think of Avatar The Last Airbender, do you also think of Game of Thrones? I imagine for all of you with a functioning frontal lobe, the answer to that question is a resounding no, which means you are not a showrunner for the live-action Netflix adaptation of Avatar The Last Airbender because for some reason, these absolute goofball-brained goobers think that they needed to change the show around to appeal to a Game of Thrones audience for some reason. I don't even think it's necessary to even entertain that delusion, but I'll do it briefly. Why? Let's just state the obvious here. Avatar aired on Nickelodeon. It's a cartoon. That is a children's station. Now, of course, Avatar is a cartoon that transcends just like a child-appreciated show. All ages can appreciate it, but it is family-friendly. Game of Thrones has titties and blood and shit out the wazoo. It's totally different. Why would you want Avatar to be morphed into something Game of Thrones adjacent? It makes no sense. That is the most out-of-touch Netflix corporate suit decision I could have ever imagined out of a boardroom. Oh, we need to tap into the Game of Thrones audience. Why? Also, for the most part, the Game of Thrones audience is dead and buried with the fucking colossal flop of Season 8 being such a fumble. Now, of course, House of the Dragon helped revive it a little bit, but even still, this is just beating a dead horse. No, it's more than that. This is like mutilating the corpse of a dead horse. It's disgusting. You're defiling it. I just can't understand that decision at all. It's like if you were doing a live-action adaptation for the Care Bears and making it dark and gritty for no reason. Yeah, we saw all the whimsy and the childlike fun of Care Bears and we wiped our ass with it. We said, it's time that Care Bears gets with the program in the 21st century. It's time that we adapt Care Bears to fit the modern audience, and we wanted to tap into fans of the Human Centipede franchise to welcome them into the Care Bears universe. Just, what are you doing? What are you doing? Now, I already made a video talking about, like, the first trailer that dropped for the Avatar series, and like I said, visually, I think it looks pretty good, and I had somewhat of an optimistic outlook on it, but I had to mention that I was still very skeptical because the creators of Avatar walked away from this Netflix adaptation quite a while ago, stating creative differences. So the actual creators that put together this masterpiece left it because they didn't like the direction it was going. And now, as it gets closer to release, it comes out at the end of this month, it's pretty clear why they left. It's because they're changing all of the most important fundamental aspects of Avatar. It's very clear why the creators would have abandoned this pile of shit. It's not looking good. Visually, it's certainly better than M. Night Shyamalan's Sin from 2010 with the Last Airbender movie, but narratively, it's looking like it could be even worse somehow. Over the last 3 days, there's been 3 bombshell new pieces of information from staff of the show that just really raises a lot of red flags and sounds the alarm. So this was the first one about wanting to appeal to Game of Thrones audiences, the showrunner saying that it couldn't just be for kids. Dummy, it was never just for kids. Avatar The Last Airbender is one of those few cartoons that everyone of all ages sings the praises of because it appeals to everybody. It was never just for kids. And you don't need to prove that it's not for kids by introducing a Game of Thrones style narrative to it for the drama. I don't even know how they're planning on weaving that in there, but I can't imagine that's going to land very well. Also went on to say it had to also appeal to the people who are big fans of Game of Thrones, so it had to feel grounded and mature and adult in that way too. That's the tightrope that we have to walk. No, you don't. You can just not walk that tightrope because it's nonsensical to do that in the first place. This is like if Nintendo would have come out right before the Mario Bros. Movie released and said, we knew in order for Mario Bros. To succeed, we needed to appeal to John Wick fans, so we had to make sure Mario Bros. Felt grounded, mature, and adult in that way too. It was our tightrope we had to walk. It's just fucking baffling. It's mind-boggling. Why does Avatar The Last Airbender need to appeal to Game of Thrones fans in any way, shape, or form? The idiot benders over there at Netflix have lost their marbles. They're off their gourd right now with this direction. And this is only one of 3 big alarming things they've said. The biggest one is by far their decision to completely change one of Sokka's main character arcs that he goes through in the show. Apparently they're toning down Sokka's sexism in the show, stating, I feel like we also took out the element of how sexist Sokka was. I feel like there were a lot of moments in the original show that were iffy. He is a flawed character, that's the whole point. I don't know why studios are so afraid of flawed characters now, where every character needs to just be morally perfect off rip, so then they're extraordinarily uninteresting and don't really have any character development. The whole point was Sokka started off very flawed, and he goes through this development where he learns, oh, women can be badass warriors too. It's not just men. It's a huge component of his character and his growth. That is one of the main things that he first goes through. And apparently they've just wiped their ass with that. Now, they didn't say that they've entirely removed it. They've said they've toned it down. Of course, no telling how much. But still, why do that? Why have that play a backseat when in the show that was pivotal to his character growth and development? I also find it comical that this aims to be more mature and adult, seemingly wanting to appeal to Game of Thrones fans, and yet they're watering down the elements of the original children's program because they believe adults are too fragile to handle it. That's just so laughable to me. Kids could handle it back then, but times are different now. We need to make sure that the adults are coddled as much as possible. It's got to be Weenie Hut Jr. and super sterile. But we also have to make sure it appeals to Game of Thrones fans. And once again, this begs the question I've asked a million times when it comes to this shit. Why are you adapting this in the first place? What is the point of your live action adaptation if you're going to change the most fundamental elements of what you're taking from? You immediately alienate the fans, and you're not bringing in any new fans from doing it. You just stand to lose. It's a lose-lose situation all around, like we saw with Halo Season 1. Now, Season 2 does appear to be going a different direction. Maybe they've learned from the mistakes. We'll see. But this is once again falling into the same fucking mistakes of why are you adapting something that you don't even seem to like or get in the first place, with further evidence from their most recent statement saying that Aang will no longer be, going on any side quests or taking any detours. He's just going to be all business all the time, which runs counter to one of Aang's big character traits, that he just wants to be a kid, that he wants to have a childhood. In fact, the whole thing starts with him running away from his responsibilities. He never wanted to be the Avatar, and he wanted to just be a kid. But in this show, I guess that's not going to exist. He's just always going to be all business all the time. And they have to know that. They're making the conscious decision to just fuck everything because they believe they can do it better. And that hubris has ruined so many of these in the past. Avatar: The Last Airbender has to be one of the most talked about shows probably ever. If you just type in Avatar: The Last Airbender on YouTube, you'll get thousands upon thousands of video essays going over all the nuance of the show, all of the plot elements, and everything that makes it so special. It is a show that has stood the test of time and is still actively discussed to this day, so many years later. So there's no way the people that worked on this are somehow ignorant to these things, but they are just choosing to completely change them for some inexplicable reason. I don't get it. Why adapt this then, if that's the case? A lot of money is going into this. You can tell that it's a high budget production just from the trailers. Visually, it looks pretty impressive, especially compared to the 2010 counterpart. So why waste all that money? You could have just done a more faithful adaptation, and I've always said I don't really see a point in adapting something one-to-one. I do believe you need to take creative liberties, but not when it comes down to the most fundamental elements of what makes that property special in the first place. You can interject your own style and your own creativity into that universe while still keeping the DNA of it intact. It really isn't that difficult, and it has been done successfully in the past. It just takes some care. I hate to keep referencing this, but I really thought they did a great job. The One Piece live action. It had the creator on board, and you can really see that helped. This had the creators on board, and they clearly must have been ignored, and all of their advice fell on deaf ears because they eventually walked away from it, and now we're left with what seems to be an impending disaster in the Avatar universe here. Yet another live-action Avatar blemish. It doesn't compute with me how many times they have to learn this lesson. These shows, when you're taking from a beloved IP, need to at least pay respect to it. This seems to be actively against it. We needed to change the whole show around so it wasn't just for kids, so it could appeal to Game of Thrones fans. When again, it never was just for kids in the first place. We had to change Sokka pretty substantially here because the whole sexism thing, it just wasn't sitting right with us. It was very iffy. Even though that was extremely important for him as part of his character growth, it's not like they used his sexism for jokes or to put people down or belittle women or anything. It was never used for like shock or anything. It was actually used because it showed that he was flawed and needed to grow, and he did grow. Like, it's just so fucking frustrating. Like, I don't get it. Why even keep doing these adaptations? So yeah, I'm not optimistic about this show. I guess we'll see. Maybe it surprises me and everyone else and it comes out and it's a banger. I just don't have any hope for that being the case anymore because of every interview they do just making it sound more and more dog shitty. That's really about it. So yeah.